Hello and welcome to part two of my deconstruction of my discussion on metaphysics on the Stefan Molyneux show. And last time I went to the 14-minute and 20-second marks thereabout, and I'm just going to head back into the sound or the recording and keep deconstructing it. So let's go.
A fantastical story, or in a story like Benjamin Button, you can say, this man aged backwards, and you can make up these stories. I have wild physics in my science fiction book, The Future, which I just released recently. So you can have these impossible things happen, but in the real world, in the world where you can't affect what happens based upon will or imagination or preference. I cannot will the weather to change. I cannot will things to move into my mind, and no one has ever been able to show that that can ever occur. And we have to at least differentiate, even if we say everything's kind of...
Nobody can show it because you have to be a part of that experience in order to have the proof. It's the old problem of other minds, which is also something that is a problem, you could say, within the materialist metaphysics, that you should be able to experience other people's minds. It's like said, okay, I guess I can't experience it, so that's not a part of the metaphysics. But why not then, right? What is the reason why you can't experience other people's experiences? What's the reason? None is given, right? And no materialist philosophers have ever been able to even address. Most of them don't even address it as a problem. It's just like, I guess that's the case, right? So there are two big problems in materialist metaphysics, which is, as I said, the problem of the minds, which means you can't, for some reason, you can't experience, well, for some reason, that's a stupid way of putting it. You should be able to experience, it would be very likely that you could experience other people's minds if you can experience the person. So what is it about that mind that makes you unable to experience it, right? The other problem is the hard problem of consciousness, which is also maybe even a bigger problem, possibly, right? But they're equally important, right? But it's a more well-known problem, right? That neurosciences and all sorts of people try to come up with an idea why red actually needs to be red. Why is it not some other color that red, or some other experience? Why does it need to have that qualia of redness to it, right? And it's completely impossible, seemingly, for those who believe they experience the actual outside to explain how that outside, from the description, the scientific description of, the what's it called, the physical description of the laws of the universe and the constants and all that, there's nothing in that necessitates the taste of potato, for instance, right? And then either they say, well, it doesn't matter. The qualia is not important, like Keith Frankish and Daniel Dennett and these kinds, right? Or they say that, well, so it's just a question of time until somebody will figure out how to explain it, right? There might be a third solution, which I believe is the correct one, that there's a paradox built into the metaphysics in materialism, which I try to point out to Stefan Molyneux, and he doesn't even, he's not even able to see the problem, right? And while that to me is it's a simpler and more parsimonious metaphysics, which is preferable, right? It also points out why you can't get to an answer for these two questions, right? Because you don't have access to that, right? It's like saying I should be able to, fondle the moon or something like that, right? I experienced the moon, so I should be able to fondle it or something like it. Maybe it's a stupid analogy, this, right? But there's a good reason why you can't fondle the moon. It's because it's very far away, so you can't reach it, right? In the same sort of fashion, you can't reach through that experience and sort of grab that which is beyond the experience, right? So that's why it's impossible to get to an answer for these two questions. So that explains, it gives an answer to the question, you could say, in the sense that it tells you you can't get to an answer. So don't bother, right? While the materialists say, yeah, but whatever, hand waving, right? Or even an ignorance towards the problem, which apparently, it seems to me, did we get to the hard problem of consciousness yet in this? But if we, I don't remember exactly if we reach that point or if it's I think it's sometime later here. I'm mentioning the hard problem of consciousness. It seemed to me that he didn't understand what I was talking about. He didn't sort of, oh yeah, I know the heart. He didn't say anything. He just sort of was silent, and I think he actually interrupted me quite suddenly afterwards, right? And when I talked about qualia, he spoke about it again. I call it sequalia or something like that. So he doesn't even know the term qualia. And this seems to me to be a kind of ignorance of the common discourse and the terms used in common philosophy, even though it's this kind of academic philosophy that tends to be sort of, state sucking, right? And have another purpose than finding to actually good philosophy to a large extent, right? At least having an idea what they talk about might be a good idea if you are sort of dealing with philosophy. But he's in a completely different zone, right? It doesn't matter to him. All that matters to him is he can keep pounding on his ideas of how things are put together, so he can stay in sanity of some kind, right? He's so afraid that somebody might convince him of something that he can't trust his senses, as I keep saying, right? And it inhibits his ability to do good philosophy. Okay, let's carry on.
A matrix or a simulation, there's a huge difference, even in the simulation, between what we can control in our own minds and using our own bodies and what we have no direct control over out there in the world. I can't walk out in the sunshine and not receive solar radiation. Right. Now, I could make up a story where somebody was immune to solar radiation. That would be an active imagination that would not reflect things in the real world.
This level of philosophy is on kindergarten level, right? It should be obvious to him that I don't need these kind of arguments. It's stupid, right? I'm talking about, qualia and metaphysics and the foundations of this thinking and so on. And he talks about you can't step outside without being hit by the sun, right? So it's like he thinks that everybody around him is fucking stupid, right? It's like he can't even spot somebody who can actually think and argue and has some kind of experience doing it. He keeps using the same examples. You can't do this without doing that. So therefore, there is an objective reality that impinges on you and so on. This kind of kindergarten argumentation is boring when I try to get something that is vastly more important okay, I understand what he's trying to do, but the way he does it seems like he's talking down to you, right? And I'm not trying to say that I'm on a different level or anything like that. I personally like that when you're sitting alone making a video, you don't try to make it sound like you are very important, but you actually just stay, to the ground and, use common terms and so on. But clearly he must see that I am better than that, right? That my shirt makes me look like that fat meatloaf guy in, Fight Club. It's like a big tits or something. Maybe I have some daddy tits. But, how far did I get? Yeah, no, I think I said what I wanted to say.
I cannot change the phase of the moon by looking at it and concentrating. So there's no possibility of changing the vast majority of the sequelae that I experience in the world. So,
sequelae? What the hell is that? It's called qualia, right? The quality of the experience. It's not referencing an experience, then you're not saying sausage. You're not referring to the qualia of sausage. A qualia of sausage might be a color and a taste and a shape and a feel and so on. These are the qualia, the qualities, right? That's why they're called qualian. It's not sequalis or whatever. Well, what planet are you from, right?
So the things that I can control or can affect directly or indirectly, and the things that I cannot affect or control directly, these are two very important categories that exist no matter what you think of the simulation.
Okay. If you could keep your answers or a little shorter, so I don't have to remember everything that you say. Just a hint. It's if you say a lot of stuff, I can remember everything and reply
Oh,
to it.
listen, I'll lead you through it. Sorry. So, have you ever been able to defy gravity?
And
Can you flip?
he thinks he needs to repeat it. Trying to say, could you make it shorter, sort of the next time, right? It's like he thinks I'm fucking stupid, right? Oh man. Getting to a point where I'm starting to get triggered now, right? I remember clearly being sort of, no, please don't repeat it. I said, no, he's just going to, attack me for interrupting him, right? What the hell can I do, man? This guy is fucking incredible, right? Thank God he's not my father, man. Oh my fucking God. Oh no. Oh, it can't be true. You know it to be true. Oh no. The Dark Lord of the Galaxy.
And fly.
No. I would like to wind back a little, right? What I'm referring to, that paradox that's built in your thinking, or the way you presented your thinking, at least in the arguments you made first. That if I say that my foot is outside my mind, how can it be outside my mind? Because it needs to be inside my mind in order to experience it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm referring to is an experience of something. But if I say it's outside my mind, that which I experience can't be that thing that it is outside. It's merely a representation of it, right? It can't be the thing itself. As Immanuel Kant would say, it's just impossible. That's the paradox. If you say
hang on, but you just saying the word paradox doesn't make it a paradox.
Oh man. Oh man, right? Trying to, circumvent the argument. Yeah, but you call it a paradox. That doesn't mean it is a paradox. No, but what I'm referring to, it doesn't matter what I call it. You should be able to recognize it. But he tries to say, no, but you call it something, doesn't mean it is because... Oh man, right? So I'm trying to explain a very, 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 very important aspect in metaphysics. And he sort of... I mean, it's like, oh man, right? Oh. In 500 years, maybe even just, 50 years, people are going to say, holy crap, this dude was thick, right? He was so thick-skulled, even if fucking slapped the argument straight into his face, he couldn't even recognize it. But he had the need to sort of try to circumvent it or attack me for the dude or whatever he did in similar situations, doing the same kind of thing, in order to find some way to argue his way out of it. It's attacking the term I used to describe it, right? It's like, what the hell is this guy doing? What does he think he's doing? What's his incentives here, right? Trying to think out what is he thinking while I'm talking to him, right? He has a different mindset than trying to get to a good philosophical discourse, right? It's somehow protecting his ideas and his business model and these kinds of worries, right? Rather than trying to figure out, if I'm saying to him, I think there's a contradiction or a paradox or whatever term I could use for it in your thinking, in your foundations of your metaphysics. If somebody said that to me, I would say, wow, thank you for pointing out. Would you please elaborate on it and explain it to me very clearly so I can understand it, right? But he's sort of, no, you're using a term I don't like to describe it. It's like, man, right?
I don't know what. Just saying the word paradox is not an argument.
Okay,
It's not an argument. Okay, so you pull the not an argument, right? It's saying it's a paradox. But I made an argument before that, and I labeled it as a paradox. That doesn't change the argument. If I called it a tomato, it's still the same argument I made, right? Even if I called it tomato. So you can't challenge the argument just because I put a wrong label on it according to your liking, right? Confront what I'm arguing. Actually, I said that if you say that something is outside your mind, how can you experience it? Because you need it to be inside in your mind. The experience must be inside your mind. And if you're referring to something else than experience, well, you need to come up with an explanation of how to get that alternative access to whatever you are claiming, right? It just doesn't hang together, right? And he's not worried about that, because what he needs to do is get rid of me, right? So I don't challenge whatever shitty philosophy he's trying to pull on people, right? That's more important, because everything he has done in the last 20 years is based on, or his philosophy is attached to all the things he has done in podcasts and books he has written and statements he has made and so on. He can't go back and change his foundations, right? Because that would entail him changing all his podcasts and checking them whether or not he's saying the right thing, and making, refutations or, errata to his books, and, whatever, make new books or whatever. He's not going to do that. He's wedded to whatever shitty philosophy he has. So he's bound to be, if I'm right, he's bound to stay in bad philosophy for the rest of his days, and his legacy will be he was too stupid to understand even basic stuff, right?
Fine. If you say it's outside your mind, you can't experience it, right? But since I'm experiencing that foot, I am referring to something, but that is in my mind, right? In order for me to experience it. So the paradox is it can't be both be outside and inside my mind. How do I address that seeming paradox, or whatever word you want to put on it?
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I have been addressing. So
No, you haven't. Sorry, you haven't.
Oh no, I have been addressing it, whether you agree with it or not. I have absolutely been addressing it.
Matter of
Okay.
words. Yeah,
So the things that are out. So there are things that I can control within my own mind. The focus of my thoughts, maybe some pain management, or whatever it is. Right. I don't think about my foot. I stub my toe. I'm suddenly.
Pain management? Can you control whether or not you feel pain? You can inhibit the pain by using some kind of drug that makes you not feel, for instance, a headache or something like that. That doesn't mean the headache isn't there still just because you have numbed it, or suppressed it using drugs. But that doesn't mean it's not there, and the reason why it's there is still also there, right? Just because you can't feel it. So the pain is not only your. You can't will yourself to have a pain, and you can't will a pain away. I don't understand what kind of pain control he's talking about. I can't do that, right?
Thinking about my foot quite a bit, right? And then I can say, I've got to stop thinking about my foot because it's not going to make the pain any better. So there are things within my mind that I can have control.
But your experience of your foot is also in your mind. Where else could it be? You are saying it comes through your senses. Your senses is sitting in your skull, right? And inside your skull is your mind. And when it gets to your mind, whatever it is you're talking about, that's where the experience is. And for some reason, he must be saying, okay, as soon as I have the experience in my mind, then at the same time, is it also outside my mind? How can it be that? There's also a time delay, apparently, between that external thing he's referring to and it becoming an experience in his mind. He can't, this sort of impossible scenario he's referring to, he doesn't understand what I'm trying to get at, right? He doesn't understand it. He simply can't step over that line. It's blocked some way, right? It's locked off, that kind of thinking, possibly because he is afraid it's going to make him crazy, right? But let me tell you, actually, the idealist approach is actually going to make you more sane in the long run. It might be a freaky thinking that your experience you think is an outside is actually in here, and just in front of you is something that you have no access to. It just feels you feel like it's mapped out and impinges on you, right? No, the experience itself is an experience as such that doesn't come with any manual that tells you this is how it's supposed to be understood. When you start to make claims about the understanding of it, that's where the metaphysics comes in. So his approach is, it's given to you. I'm just opening my eyes and receiving that outside. So, but it's a paradoxical statement to say when I open my eyes, the outside enters into my mind, right? And while I'm having an experience inside, I'm always also having an experience of that outside. Now that's what I'm challenging. How the hell can you experience that outside if it needs to come through your senses? So then it must be inside, right? And you're sort of walking around in this seemingly 3D outside world, which is actually just, it's sort of metaphysically blindfolded, right? A term I've used before, right? Sort of a little, poetic maybe, right? But metaphysically blindfolded, that you are walking in a simulation, you could say. And I'm not particularly fond of the term simulation, but, and that simulation works because it has been evolutionarily evolved. Starting with a little blob, and then it has, evolved and evolved and evolved, getting more and more complex and more, different colors, and some things, waves you can't see because you don't need them, and so on, right? It has been optimized to function toward its end, which obviously would be some kind of survival, right? But survival is also an interpretation of what is going on. Survival is a part of my abstraction of my experience. Survival might not be what is really going on out there in that which I don't have access to, right? But the mind's way of describing that is survival. Or my interpretation, you could say, my philosophy, right? So it is a little abstract and a little spooky at times too, when the penny really drops in this, what we could say an idealist approach, right? Which is vastly superior to the other one, right? There might be even better ones that I haven't either come up with or heard about, right? In my mind, there's nothing that is can touch idealist approach to metaphysics in any way, because it points out these two problems: the problem of the mind and the hard problem of consciousness. Why you can't get to an answer, and it puts yourself in the center of your experience, right? You're not a part of a bigger kind of world. You are the world you're experiencing, and you are interpreting your experience in order to get around in that world which it is an experience of, right? So it puts the onus on you in order to come up with a philosophy. I would always be a proponent of every fucking individual in the world should do his or her own philosophy as best as they can, right? That's why I'm doing philosophy. It's not because I like to talk about it and enlighten people or help them enlighten themselves and get to start to do philosophy. But I'm not going to tell anybody what to think, right? I'm just pounding my ideas in order to ignite, other people's potential want and need to do philosophy themselves. But I can't tell you what to think and how to interpret your experience. I am interpreting my experience. What I'm pointing out with Stefan Molyneux is that his metaphysics, there's an inherent problem. There's a contradiction there, right? He's working from something that is seemingly impossible. That's what I can point out. If he has a certain interpretation of his experiences, I can't say that he should call an elephant an elephant. If he wants to call it Bob, he can call it Bob or all he wants. Fine with me. right? I can't tell him what to do, but I can point out if there's a contradiction. And I'm saying I don't think you can, you are stepping further than you are allowed in a rigid kind of thinking, right? That's always a good thing when people are when they have moral rules, anything like that, as soon as they contradict their own rules, then you got them by the balls, right? Because then it's not a rule, right? It's not, you have to think this way and they violate their own thinking. It doesn't work, right? It's unlikely that it works. Okay.
An influence over, right? And so early, when we had our disagreement at the beginning of the conversation about talking over each other, we were both asking or making the commitment to not talk over each other, which is great because we have control over that. There are things that I don't have any control over. I cannot open my eyes and not see. I cannot have significant sound waves hit my ears and not hear. So there are things, there's two categories, right? There are things that I can have some influence or control over, and there are things that I have no influence or control over. I cannot satisfy my hunger without eating food. I cannot satisfy my thirst without...
He doesn't understand what I'm talking about. When he talks about food or thirst, those are experiences in his mind, right? That's the point I'm trying to get to. And he talks about something else. He's in another paradigm or what term I should use, right? Than what I'm trying to talk about. And it's annoying that I have to sit there and wait for him to finish his monologue before I can say, I think that we're talking about something different than I was trying to ask you about, right? And if he wants me to ask a question, at least he could adhere to answering that question or what is entailed in the question, which was a metaphysical kind. Then he's talking about all sorts of other stuff, right? And that's fucking annoying.
Drinking. Now, if I'm hungry and I can't get food for a while, I can say, well, I shouldn't really concentrate on my hunger. I should try and think of something else so it's not as uncomfortable. But I cannot survive without food coming in from the external world. And if I fall asleep and I dream that I've eaten food, I don't wake up with a full belly, right? So there are things that are within my mind.
And he's talking about dreaming of food. I mean, why is he talking about dreaming, right? Dreams are not a part of a metaphysical discussion, right? Or discussion of metaphysics. It isn't. It's a particular kind of experience you have apparently when you're sleeping, right? But you're not in control of that. It doesn't matter. You can't philosophize while dreaming, right? You can only wake up and then philosophize. And then you're philosophizing about a memory of a dream. So it doesn't function. You can't combine dreaming and philosophy, in my opinion, right? That's why I wanted to leave dreams out of it. It's a separate category of experiences based on memories and stuff like that, right? And concepts and ideas of colors and sort of that is sort of from a memory catalog or something. I don't care about that, right? That's not metaphysics, in my opinion, right?
And there are things which, of course, yes, I understand this conversation is occurring within my mind, and the room that I'm in, that I'm looking at, is within my mind. I mean, but there's still categories.
What is it? So he understands that the ground floor is things that the experience is in mind. That's the first step, is experience. That must be what he's saying. He understands that. It's like, yes, of course I understand that. But why are you talking about something else? Because that's what I want to talk about, right? And it's like, yeah, but that's not important, that experience. The important thing is that thing that's out there or something like that, if I should interpret what he's trying to get at. But that's what I'm saying. You can't get to that outside because it needs to be that experience you just referred to, right? I mean, how do you explain this to a dude like this, right? And he have preconceived ideas of where I want to go with this, and he's sort of thinking he's attempting to throw me off and make me crazy or something like that. So he has to. So he's in this trench warfare kind of approach, right? He's defending his thinking as if it must be perfect because it works for me and I'm staying sane. I had a crazy mother and a crazy father and a crazy brother and everything was crazy. And so now I'm sane because I had philosophy and I've found the right solutions and I'm, impressing them on the world and I have to stay with those. Nobody should challenge them. Otherwise they might make me crazy. Something like that, right? Okay.
Of all the sense data that comes in, some I can influence, some I cannot. And these two things are the delineation in epistemology between the subjective and the objective. The objective is that which you cannot directly influence with your mind and exists and impresses its...
You can't influence anything with your mind, right? You can't influence. You can be aware of certain things, right? That's why I like to divide it into experiences and awarenesses, right? I have an experience of color, sounds, whatever, right? And I can make some of those sounds, but I can decide to make a sound, but I can't, control what that sound would be or anything like that, right? But I have those experiences and I can be aware of those experiences. And the awareness is necessary, in my opinion, because you need to cognize certain objects, or the cognition you do to the usefulness of the experience is by cognizing various things within that experiences. And those cognitions are the objects, like elephant, a bicycle, and the strawberry cake, or whatever, right? That's because the strawberry cake has a certain value, the elephant has a certain value, the bicycle has a certain value to me, to my rationalizations that follow from that, right? But the awareness is not me trying to do something about the experience. I can't change the experience. I can't will any particular experience. I can only move my ass around so it's more likely that I get a particular experience that I like to have. I can move my ass over to the fridge and find my, tomatoes, right? And when I look and there's those red ones that looks like this and soft like this and whatever, I say that's possibly a tomato and then I eat it, right? But I can will myself to that experience. I'm not influencing the experience. I'm moving my ass around because I expect to have the experience when I've moved my ass over there, for instance, right? So my mind is not influencing anything. I'm thinking about stuff, but that is not an influence, right? That's not an influence on the experience. And the experience is that which we have to deal with, in my opinion, in metaphysics, right? Physics is a description of the world, how it moves about, how you calculate stuff. And so metaphysics is that layer above physics that describe how you understand it in the first place, right? So it's about that outside world, and he just does identify that which you can't change is a part of is that which he labels as that outside world, or the experience that you can classify as an outside world, right? But I would rather say that is the qualia, the colors, the sounds, and so on. If it doesn't have any of these, it is not something that is an outside world, because they come from senses that are placed on this skull that seems to be in the in a sort of concentric ring around my mind, so to say, outside my mind, right? Even though it's experience, but if I place my mind in that experience, it is within a circle of placements of senses that are seems to be responsible for these 5 different kinds of sense data, right? That eventually becomes the qualia. So what was I going for? I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, but let's get back to the video.
Self on your mind in a clear, predictable, utterly rules-based way, in a way that dreams don't.
Utterly rules-based. Rules-based? When you can't just pull rules out of your ass. while you're, yeah, so now there are rules apparently. Where the hell did they come from? And are they your rules or my rules? Or are they the divine intervention or, whatever? Are they a sixth rule sense where rules arrive from somewhere? He can't just grab some word and then stick it into his argumentation without clarifying why are you starting to use that term, right? So it's a confused mess of argumentation. He is trying to be sort of a moderator of this discussion, and from the basics, I would say that's a decent attitude to have, right? That somebody should sort of moderate how this discussion goes. But the way he moderates it makes it confusing and all over the place, and it's like it's a destruction of a discourse rather than trying to make it comfortable and approachable, understandable and rigid and structured, right? This kind of philosophy should be structured very precisely, and you're one step at a time, so you don't step into something you can't stand by, right? So he rejects that approach completely and just takes words and terms and say objective, subjective, and rules and science or whatever. He's just throwing words around, right? So that's extremely bad philosophy, right?
Yeah, but when you start in metaphysics, you can't take anything for granted. You can't say there is this and there is that. There's an outside and there's an inside, right? And another point I might
No, that's not what I said, though. That's not even close to what I said. No, that's not. If you're going to straw man me, then we can't have the conversation.
You are interrupting me now.
No, if you straw man me, I won't live for that. I can't accept that.
No, not straw manning you.
You are absolutely straw manning me. Perhaps you could repeat my argument to make sure that you understand it. I'm not saying you agree.
So now I have to sit. I'm like a little schoolboy who has been listening to the master who has presented some kind of argument apparently, and now I have to recapture it. And if I haven't recaptured, I haven't listened to his master teachings, and I'm a bad schoolboy, right? I'm trying to. Okay, he's talking about something that hasn't to do with what I'm trying to get at. So I'm sort of, okay, how do I get back to talking about that, which was my question? And then I'm sort of, I don't really care about what he's talking about. Then he says, you have to repeat what I said. But I didn't listen very carefully because you're talking about something that's not with the question or hasn't to do with the question, right? So it's like, oh man, right? So I have to repeat back to him like he's the master of philosophy who sort of throwing me around like, stupid asshole that has to be lectured by the master of philosophy. What a dick, man, right? Oh, man.
With it, but if you could repeat the argument, then I'd have some sense that you were listening.
Because you talk about an outside and an inside, and it's
no. I said everything occurs inside the mind. So perhaps you would like to try that again.
Okay, but that's not what I heard. You said there's an objective reality that I am experiencing by opening my eyes, as you said, something like that, right?
Okay, so you haven't been following the argument. Would you like me to repeat it?
What a condescending asshole, right? You haven't followed my teachings. I'm trying to, make my own expression of how I understand what he's saying. So my understanding must be word by word, precisely recaptured what he said. Otherwise, I'm trying to strawman him. What paranoid delusion is he living in, right? You can't invite people on your show and treat them like this. You're a fucking asshole, man, right? What are you afraid of? You should be able to handle, as you said, you can steal, man, whatever. You can handle other kinds of thinking that might go in a completely different direction than your own thinking, right? Try to weigh that in comparison with your thinking and say, okay, I think it might go wrong there, or something like that. But why are we not talking about that potential paradox I'm trying to point out? He's sort of trying to get away from it, right? Is he actually afraid that I'm going to convince him that there actually is a problem with his metaphysics, which is I'm fully convinced on, right? That would be too much for him to handle. So we have to pull out some kind of sophistry that can sort of eventually, just like it did with that guy, philosopher versus nihilist, or nihilist versus philosopher, where he basically, if you keep saying that, I'm going to kick you out. It's just, he's, what's it called? He keeps adding to the fire, or trying to create drama that he can sort of say, "Oh, you're acting stupid. I have to. If you do it again, I have to kick you out," or sort of. And then it looks like he's just being a virtuous philosopher trying to do it, but this asshole comes in here and tries to, confuse me. I had to get rid of him before he destroys my fan base and whatever, right? It's just a sophist trick to get rid of people who can actually argue. Holy crap, man.
No, you said when you open your eyes, you can't control whether or not you experience this or that, as if it's an outside, enforcing itself on you through your senses, something like that, implying.
No, I never said no. What? Come on. As if it's a clear example. Hang on. When you say you said this as if something, that's a clear straw man. Because I didn't say that. Okay, so you can't say, well, I'm going to use the word as if and then say that you said that. Right? As if it's a clear, like, well, you said this as if it was an elephant that was saying it. It's like, no, but so what was my argument? Because I said everything occurs within the mind. I accept that. What was my argument?
No, I want to get back to the core of the start of metaphysics, because
you're not even hearing my argument, because you are mischaracterizing my argument completely. So there's no point in having the debate if you're not even listening.
Oh, so this is the trick, right? I'm starting to, my monologue on this, and I'm sort of confused. Why are you talking about this? This doesn't have any bearing on the question. So I'm not really interested in what he's saying there, because it's not a part of the discourse I'm trying to get at, right? I'm trying to constantly pull him back to this paradox. And then he says, no, you have to repeat it, otherwise you're not listening, and then we don't have to have this discussion, so I can get rid of you, right? It is so bad, right? This is how bad it is. This guy is a fucking imposter when it comes to philosophy, right? He has no fucking clue, and he's even worse than that, he's corrupt in the sense that he's not interested in changing his mind about anything in his philosophy. He wants to keep pounding the same story year after year after year without being, challenged. He doesn't give a crap of people who have other ideas that might enlighten him or might not enlighten him. But he's only focused on getting rid of people who can do philosophy, right? So that, if he thinks he's going to be remembered for anything, that is the A word is going to be remembered for, right? And it's in the later years, it has been a recurring thing. I remember back sort of the 7 or 8 years listening to Stefan Molyneux. He was much more mellow in his sort of wording and so on. Now he's yelling at people and behaving very sort of, I might not say aggressive, but this is short. There's a short fuse, right? He explodes into something, get rid of your asshole, sort of implicitly, right? The real big turn in this was, in my opinion, the rationality rules thing, where he just hand-waved an argument about his core argument in UPB off as, I haven't got the book in front of me or something like that. Such an asshole, really inviting a guy in a Sunday evening to have a discussion about your own freaking moral system. And then when that guy asks a question about your core argument, you're saying, that's boring, right? What a fucking flying dick, man, right? And it's again and again and again, he has this behavior, right? It seems like he's sort of frustrated that he's only getting more and more obscure in sort of worldwide philosophy or whatever, right? And he's thinking that, but I'm great, I'm the greatest. They must listen to me, right? And then I get these weird guys talking about things that might make me crazy. I have to get rid of them, right? Oh, in 100 years, they are going to make weird memes of the Molly memes, right? Where he, not an argument, something like that. I think that I see this angry philosopher waving arms and something like that, and the text below is not a philosopher. Something like that. When 100 years and everybody, that's the dude. He thought he was the greatest. He was practically the worst philosopher in the early 20th century, right? So let's remember to not be as stupid as he was, right? Now that we finally got around to understanding this paradox that is built in most people's understanding of metaphysics, we can finally get to some new grounds in philosophy. Thank God we don't have people like Stefan Molyneux around anymore, right?
No, I was the one starting the question, and I would like to hang on to that question I presented, right? That the starting point of metaphysics. If we are going to discuss metaphysics, I would like to stay where that start to wind back to that point where I think it's important to make sure that you understand my argument. So
I haven't mischaracterized your argument. You've mischaracterized mine.
Oh, man, no. You have to, I made an argument, you mischaracterized. We had to stay here. No, we can't go back to no, we have to, you said something wrong about my argument. This is childish level, man, right? Oh.
No, but I'm trying to interpret what you're trying to say. The thinking behind it. I don't have
no, don't interpret it. No, don't interpret it. Hang on. Don't.
So now I'm not allowed to make any interpretations. No, I have to abide to his statements. This is the statement I made. You accept that statement. No interpretations allowed. No understanding of what might be behind the thinking. No. Because he has to state it himself. You are thinking is not allowed. Oh, man. This is actually, to some extent, it's a fun experience to be around, because I felt no grace or I felt no respect or anything about him, right? There was nothing about him that made me sort of sit back and say, well, let me listen to what he's saying. He was constantly on his fences, right? It's like philosophy for him is some kind of battle between various fractions of which he's the superior, and he has to enforce people with, you have to understand this statement, agree with me or disagree, and if you disagree, you're kicked out of the system. This kind of approach, right? It's dysfunctional. It's this dysfunctional approach to a philosophical discourse, right? And he being completely ignorant of it, or he doesn't care, he actually liked to be this way, says a lot about both him and the people who support him, right? They actually like this kind of behavior. They must, or they are completely ignorant of what the hell is going on here, right?
Don't interpret it. Just repeat it back. I mean, I can give...
I'm not going to repeat back as a little child. You will repeat back my commandments, right? What a fucking dick, man, right? Who the hell does he think I am?
I can give you a strong argument for communism, and I'm not a communist, right? So just repeat the argument back to me, because if we're not following each other, then there's really not much point having the discussion.
To be honest, I don't know exactly what argument you are referring to then.
Well, the argument is not that there's things that I can directly experience outside the mind. I've never said that. I've fully accepted that everything occurs in the mind. The mind cannot peel itself out of the skull and go wandering around directly touching things in the universe. I'm fully accept that everything is occurring within the mind. That does.
Okay, so when I say, okay, but what about that outside? And then he says, no, I said it was inside. Yeah, but you're talking about some outside world, aren't you? And then he's sort of gaslighting me. No, that wasn't what I. So what the hell is he talking about when he talks? Oh, then there's the objective and the subjective. But if it's all in your mind, isn't it all subjective then? Because it's my mind it is in, and you might have your mind and so on, right? But then it's all subjective. Why are you having objective and subjective then, right? So it's like the basics of what he's saying doesn't even hang together, right? Otherwise, he's just trying to gaslight me into being so confused that and that's why I keep trying to pull back. I don't want to be in this gaslighting weirdo argumentation style he has, because it's freaky, right?
Does not make me a radical subjectivist or a skeptic or anything like that. I'm not a Cartesian skeptic. I'm not a Humean skeptic or anything like that. So given that you and I both agree that everything is occurring within the mind, how do I differentiate what I'm arguing for is external to the mind and what is internal to the mind?
Yeah, but then if you're saying everything from the ground is within your mind, then we agree. We're on the same page from the starting point. But then there's nothing in that. Then you can't say about that experience, which you only from the starting ground have inside your mind, that you need to start to point out what part of it is something that is outside the mind, or a representation, or something outside. Why would you need to get to that philosophy? It's like it's
kind of
what is it about it that
now
makes you
as if it's a
convinced
given that you need to start
differentiate what part of it is?
It's like I was kind of talking to myself there, but it's like I was trying to say that, okay, if we say that the experiences, the qualia, are the starting point, right? Then it's like, okay, so now we need to go, as he would formulate it, or I'm interpreting his formulation, is that, okay, so now we have to figure out what is objective, what is subjective. Why do we need to do that? I'm not saying we don't need to do it, but what follows from the experiences that now the next step is that step? How does it follow? I'm not saying it doesn't follow. I just want to understand why it follows. Why that's the next step, or seemingly the next step. Right? So you can make the delineation between those experiences that I consider being an outside, or that has a certain, when I open my eyes and open my ears and whatever, right? And those other ones, like, the feeling of hunger and so on, they're sort of different in category. Okay, fine. But you're categorizing those experiences doesn't make them an outside experience. That's why I'm saying you have to manifest it as an axiom where you're saying, I am working from an axiom that says these kinds of experiences are representations of an outside. I can't argue my way to it, right? I have to state it as an axiom. There's nothing in my experiences that necessitates me to make that delineation, and then attach certain interpretations to them in an argumentative or a reasoned fashion, right? It's because I want it to be identified or classified or interpreted as an outside. But me wanting it to be it is not a sufficient reasoning level or sufficient reasoning in order to prove that it must be an outside, right? So therefore I have to axiomize it. When you can't reason your way to it, and this is sort of it's a deep level kind of philosophy, right? But it's so important that that's why this connecting the dots and confirmation bias kind of philosophy is, you have to avoid it at all costs, because you are inevitably going to get to the conclusion you want to get to, right? It's a confirmation bias. It's not rigid philosophy. You have to be certain that you're not just jumping to that conclusion you want to get to, right? So, but if you want to get that way, you have to state it as an axiom and say, I'm going that way because I'm deciding to label it as such. And these axioms are the points where other people can agree with you or disagree with you, right? They can also agree or disagree about your philosophy, right? But the control points are the axioms. If they disagree with your axiom, you know that you shouldn't interact with them, right? Or something along those lines. If I have an axiom that I interpret these kinds of experiences as a representation of an outside, that's my axiom. And you agree with the axiom, so far so good, right? Then you can, each of us philosophize further and get to new axioms, right? That, for instance, only concepts can be knowledge, something like that. If you don't like my axiom, fine, then we don't have to interact, because we are actually identified. We have different understanding of our experiences, right? Different ways to approach it. Fine, that's what you want. You don't want to enforce your ideas or your axioms on somebody else. You want to agree with them or disagree. And I'm of that conviction that if I was bumping it, let's say, well, everybody in the world started doing this kind of philosophy, would be fantastic, right? And then bumping into various people. Okay, what are your axioms? What are your axioms? Okay, those with that axiom go over there. Sort of, you know what I mean, right? I would be like, okay, you have a different. We have the first three axioms. We agree. Then you have a fourth axiom that is between my third and my fourth axioms. So maybe I should, do something about my philosophy. Maybe I've overlooked something, or maybe we disagree about our fourth axiom in that row of axioms. And then I would say, I disagree with you, but would you mind telling me the philosophy from axiom number 3 to that axiom that is different from my axiom? I might have done something wrong, and I might change my axioms, say, yeah, I guess you're right. You're actually right, I think. I'm changing my axiom, so now we can work together, right? You understand where I'm going? This is what philosophy should be, in my opinion. Not Stefan Molyneux yelling at people on his show and forcing them to repeat his questions or stupid shit like that. It's disgusting, right?
Inside, and what part of it is something that is representation of an outside.
Oh,
So
because
that-
I don't want to be
that-
insane.
I would say
Yeah,
that
because I hang on.
Oh, so that's all of a sudden an argument. So philosophy is about whether or not he wants to go insane. It's stupid, right? It's fucking stupid. Because I don't want to go insane. Okay, so basically the philosophical discourse stops there. Because his opinion, his emotion, the stability of his psychology inflicts itself on how he is able to do this kind of discussion, right? So now we're stopping here because I don't want to go crazy. So you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the philosophical discussion. You're afraid of going crazy. I mean, so why are you being the boss of this philosophical discussion if you can't handle deep level philosophy without risking going crazy, right? You should stop doing what you're doing. You are pathetically weak. You can't handle even simple discussions like this. It's sort of for two people who are sort of well versed in philosophy and can do these kind of discussions, you're pretty awful at it, right? And if you, at the same time you're afraid of going crazy, maybe you should stop doing it. Maybe you have gone crazy, right? How would you know? Okay. I think I have to stop here. We are rounding around the 1 hour mark, and I'm running out of juice on my laptop here. So before it stops, let me just say thank you for joining in part 2. Let's get to part 3 in not too far future. And we are at the 24:46 minute mark, so we are sort of halfway through until he kicks me out and starts to, on his 20-hour monologue, pissing on me afterwards. Okay, see you later.